Marcus Williams pulled his black SUV into the driveway of his new home. The house was bigger than anything he had ever owned before. It had white walls, a red front door, and a green lawn that looked perfect. He turned off the car and sat for a moment, looking at the house that would be his family's new home. The neighborhood was called Willowbrook Heights. All the houses looked expensive and well kept. The streets were clean and quiet. There were no loud noises or busy traffic. It was exactly what Marcus had wanted for his family. Marcus got out of the car and stretched his arms. He had been driving for 3 hours from their old house across town. His wife Sarah would arrive later with their 2 children, Emma and Jake. Emma was 8 years old and loved to draw. Jake was 6 and could not sit still for more than 5 minutes. The moving truck was already there, parked on the street. 2 men in blue uniforms were waiting by the truck. Marcus walked over to them and shook their hands. "Good morning," Marcus said. "I'm Marcus Williams. Thank you for being here early." "No problem, sir," said the older man. "I'm Dave, and this is my partner, Jim. We'll have everything moved in by this afternoon." Marcus unlocked the front door and showed the movers where to put the furniture. The house felt empty and cold, but he knew it would feel like home soon. Sarah had already picked out paint colors for each room. Emma wanted her room to be purple, and Jake wanted his to be blue like the ocean. As the movers brought in boxes and furniture, Marcus noticed people looking at him from their windows. Some neighbors walked by slowly, trying to get a good look at who was moving in. A few people waved, and Marcus waved back with a smile. An older woman with gray hair was working in her garden next door. She kept looking over at Marcus while she pulled weeds. Marcus thought about going over to introduce himself, but she went inside her house before he could walk over. By noon, most of the big furniture was inside. Marcus decided to take a break and walk around the neighborhood. He wanted to see what was nearby and maybe meet some neighbors. The houses on his street were all large and expensive looking. Each house had a perfect lawn and nice cars in the driveway. Some houses had swimming pools in the backyard. Marcus could see them through the spaces between houses. He walked past a house with a white fence and saw a woman about his age planting flowers. She had blonde hair and wore expensive-looking clothes. When she saw Marcus, she stopped what she was doing and stared at him. "Hello," Marcus said as he walked by. "I'm Marcus. I just moved in down the street." The woman looked surprised. She glanced at his house, then back at him. "Oh," she said. "Welcome to the neighborhood, I guess." Marcus thought her response was a bit cold, but he kept walking. Maybe she was just having a bad day. At the end of the street, there was a small park with swings and a slide. Marcus smiled, thinking about how much Emma and Jake would love playing there. He could already picture weekend mornings when he would bring them to play while Sarah made breakfast. On his way back to his house, Marcus saw a man washing his car in his driveway. The man was about 50 years old and wore a polo shirt and khaki pants. When he saw Marcus approaching, he turned off his hose. "You must be the new neighbor," the man said. He did not smile, but he was not unfriendly either. "Yes, I'm Marcus Williams," Marcus said, walking over to shake the man's hand. "Tom Peterson," the man replied. "That's quite a nice house you bought. Those don't come cheap around here." Marcus nodded. "We're very excited to be here. It seems like a great neighborhood for families." Tom looked at Marcus carefully. "What kind of work do you do, if you don't mind me asking?" "I work for the city," Marcus said. It was true, even though he did not give all the details. He had learned over the years that telling people he was a police commander sometimes made conversations uncomfortable. "City work, huh?" Tom said. "Well, I hope you'll like it here. We have a pretty active HOA that keeps things running smoothly." Marcus had heard about the HOA when he bought the house. The homeowners association had rules about what color you could paint your house, how tall your grass could be, and where you could park your car. "That sounds good," Marcus said. "I like keeping things neat and organized." Tom seemed to relax a little. "Good to hear. The HOA president is Janet Morrison. She lives in the big house with the stone driveway. She's very dedicated to keeping our property values high." The way Tom said dedicated made Marcus think there might be more to that story, but he did not ask questions. When Marcus got back to his house, Sarah's car was pulling into the driveway. Emma and Jake jumped out before Sarah had even turned off the engine. "Daddy!" Emma shouted, running to hug him. "Is this really our new house? It's so big." Jake ran past them toward the front door. "Can I see my room? Can I see my room right now?" Sarah got out of the car and stretched. She looked tired from the drive, but she was smiling. "How's it going, honey?" she asked, giving Marcus a kiss. "Good so far," Marcus said. "The movers are almost done. I met a couple of neighbors." "Are they nice?" Sarah asked. Marcus thought about Tom Peterson and the woman with the flowers. "They seem fine, maybe a little curious about the new family." Sarah nodded. She had grown up in neighborhoods like this one. She knew that being one of the few black families would mean extra attention. At least at first. "Come on," Marcus said to his family. "Let me show you our new home." They spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking boxes and deciding where to put things. Emma loved her big bedroom with 2 windows. Jake was excited about the backyard, which was 3 times bigger than their old one. As evening came, Marcus stood in his front yard, looking at his new house. The lights were on inside, and he could see Sarah helping the kids get ready for bed. This was what he had worked so hard for. A safe, quiet place where his children could grow up without worrying about crime or bad schools. He had spent 15 years working his way up in the police department. He had worked nights, weekends, and holidays. He had missed some of Emma's school plays and Jake's soccer games. But it had all been worth it to give his family this chance. Tomorrow, Sarah would start looking for a new job nearby. The kids would visit their new school to meet their teachers, and Marcus would continue doing the job he loved, keeping the city safe. As he walked toward his front door, Marcus felt hopeful about their future in Willowbrook Heights. He had no idea that within just a few weeks, his peaceful new life would be turned upside down by neighbors who could not believe that a black family could afford to live in their expensive neighborhood. 2 weeks had passed since Marcus Williams moved his family into their new home in Willowbrook Heights. The house was starting to feel more like home every day. Sarah had found a job at a local bank, and the kids were excited about starting at their new school next month. Marcus had established a routine. Every Saturday morning, he would drive to the large grocery store downtown to buy food for the week. He liked to shop early when the store was not crowded. This Saturday was no different. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of Whole Foods Market at 8 in the morning. The store was known for having the best organic vegetables and high-quality meat in the city. It was more expensive than other grocery stores, but Marcus believed good food was worth the extra money. He grabbed a shopping cart and walked into the store. The floors were clean and shiny, and soft music played in the background. Marcus enjoyed shopping here because everything was organized and the staff was always helpful. First, he went to the meat section. Tonight, Sarah was cooking dinner for Marcus's partner from work, and his wife. Marcus wanted to buy the best steaks he could find. He looked at the different cuts of beef behind the glass counter. "Can I help you, sir?" asked the man behind the counter. He wore a white apron and a friendly smile. "I'd like 4 ribeye steaks, please," Marcus said. "The thick ones." The man selected 4 beautiful steaks and wrapped them in white paper. "These are some of our best," he said. "Perfect for grilling." Marcus thanked him and put the steaks in his cart. The price was high, but he did not mind. He worked hard for his money, and he wanted his guests to have a good meal. Next, Marcus went to the produce section. He picked out fresh asparagus, red, bell peppers, and mushrooms for Sarah to cook with the steaks. He also grabbed a bag of organic salad mix and some cherry tomatoes. In the wine section, Marcus spent time choosing a good bottle of red wine. He was not an expert, but he had learned about wine from a friend who worked at a restaurant. He picked a bottle that cost $60. It would be perfect with the steaks. By the time Marcus finished shopping, his cart was full. He had organic, vegetables, expensive meat, good wine, and special cheese that Sarah liked. The total cost was over $200, but Marcus was not worried. He made good money as a police commander, and he believed in buying quality food for his family. Marcus loaded all the grocery bags into the back of his SUV. The bags from Whole Foods were brown paper with the store's logo. Anyone could see that he had been shopping at an expensive store. The drive back to Willowbrook Heights took 15 minutes. Marcus listened to jazz music on the radio and thought about how nice the evening would be. His partner David and his wife were good people, and Sarah was an excellent cook. When Marcus pulled into his driveway, he saw a woman standing on the sidewalk in front of his house. She was about 45 years old with short brown hair. She wore a white tennis outfit and held a clipboard in her hand. Next to her stood a teenage boy who looked bored and annoyed. Marcus recognized the woman from Tom Peterson's description. This had to be Janet Morrison, the HOA president. The boy must be her son. Marcus got out of his car and walked toward them. "Good morning," he said with a polite smile. "I'm Marcus Williams. You must be my neighbors." Janet Morrison looked at Marcus, then at his car full of grocery bags. Her eyes moved slowly from the Whole Foods bags to Marcus's face and back to the bags again. "I'm Janet Morrison," she said in a voice that was not quite friendly. "I'm the president of the Willowbrook Heights Homeowners Association. This is my son Tyler." Tyler Morrison was about 16 years old. He had blonde hair and wore expensive sneakers and a designer t-shirt. He stared at Marcus with unfriendly eyes and did not say hello. "It's nice to meet you both," Marcus said. "I've heard good things about the neighborhood association." Janet looked at the grocery bags again. "I see you shop at Whole Foods," she said. "That's an expensive store." Marcus was surprised by the comment. It seemed like a strange thing to notice about a new neighbor. "Yes, they have good quality food," he said. Tyler stepped closer to his mother and whispered something in her ear. Janet nodded and looked at Marcus again. "Tyler was just noticing that you seem to shop there quite often," Janet said. "He's seen your car there several times." Marcus felt uncomfortable. Why was this teenager watching where he shopped? "I like to buy fresh food for my family," he said simply. Tyler spoke for the first time. "That's interesting," he said in a rude voice. "Most people in this neighborhood don't need to shop so often. We usually buy everything we need in one trip." Marcus looked at the boy, surprised by his unfriendly attitude. "Everyone has different shopping habits," he said calmly. Janet Morrison seemed to agree with her son. "Tyler has a point," she said. "It is unusual to see someone making so many trips to such an expensive store, especially someone who just moved into the neighborhood." Marcus began to understand what was happening. These people were questioning whether he belonged in their neighborhood. They could not believe that a black man could afford to shop at expensive stores and live in an expensive house. "I can afford to shop wherever I want," Marcus said. His voice was still polite, but there was steel in it now. Tyler rolled his eyes. "Sure you can," he said. "Everyone says that." Marcus felt his anger rising, but he controlled it. He had dealt with people like this before. The best thing to do was stay calm and not give them any reason to cause trouble. "Is there something specific you needed to discuss about the HOA?" Marcus asked Janet. Janet looked at her clipboard. "Actually, yes. There have been some complaints about noise coming from your house and about cars parked in the wrong places." Marcus was confused. "Noise? What kind of noise? And I always park in my own driveway." "Well," Janet said, looking uncomfortable, "some neighbors have mentioned hearing loud music and voices." Marcus thought about this. The only loud voices in his house came from Emma and Jake playing in the backyard. And Sarah sometimes played music while she cooked, but never very loud. "I think there might be some mistake," Marcus said. "We're very quiet people, and we have young children, so we don't have loud parties or anything like that." Tyler made a sound like he did not believe this. "Right," he said. "Young children. That explains all the expensive grocery runs." Marcus stared at the boy. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," Janet said quickly, pulling her son closer to her. "Tyler, we should go." But Tyler was not finished. "It just seems weird," he said. "A guy moves into this neighborhood and suddenly he's buying hundreds of dollars of groceries every week. Makes you wonder where all that money comes from." Marcus understood. Now, these people thought he was dealing drugs or doing something illegal. They could not imagine any other way a black man could afford to live in their neighborhood. "I work for a living," Marcus said coldly. just like everyone else here. What kind of work? Tyler asked. Tyler, that's enough, Janet said. But Marcus could see in her eyes that she wanted to know the answer too. I work for the city, Marcus said. He did not owe these people any explanations, but he wanted to end this conversation. City work doesn't usually pay enough for this neighborhood, Tyler said. Unless you're doing something else on the side. Marcus had heard enough. I think this conversation is over, he said. If you have official HOA business to discuss, you can call me or send me a letter. Otherwise, I have groceries to put away. Janet Morrison's face turned red. She was not used to people dismissing her so easily. Mr. Williams, she said in a stern voice, the HOA takes community standards very seriously. If there are concerns about a resident's activities, we will investigate them. What activities? Marcus asked. Shopping for food? Living in my own house? Any activities that might affect property values or community safety, Janet said. Marcus looked at both of them for a long moment. I see, he said. Well, I can assure you that my family and I follow all laws and all HOA rules. If you have specific complaints, please put them in writing. He turned and walked back to his car to get his groceries. Janet and Tyler Morrison stood on the sidewalk watching him. Marcus could hear them talking in low voices, but he could not hear what they were saying. As Marcus carried his expensive groceries into his house, he felt angry and sad at the same time. He had worked hard his whole life to be able to afford a nice home in a safe neighborhood. But some people would never accept that a black family could earn their place in a community like this. Marcus put the steaks in the refrigerator and the vegetables in the pantry. Tonight, he would cook dinner for his friends and try to forget about Janet Morrison and her rude son, but he had a feeling this would not be the last time he would have problems with his new neighbors. The following Saturday morning arrived bright and sunny. Marcus Williams woke up early as he always did. Sarah was still sleeping, and he could hear Emma and Jake quietly playing in their rooms. Today was special because Marcus's brother Tony and his wife were coming for dinner. Sarah had planned to cook a big meal, so Marcus needed to buy extra food. Marcus got dressed in his weekend clothes, old jeans, a comfortable t-shirt, and sneakers. He grabbed his wallet and keys and headed out to his SUV. The neighborhood was quiet at 7:30 in the morning. Most people were still sleeping or having breakfast with their families. The drive to Whole Foods was peaceful. Marcus listened to the news on the radio and thought about how much he was looking forward to seeing his brother. Tony lived 2 hours away and they did not get to visit very often. At the grocery store, Marcus filled his cart with everything Sarah had asked for. He bought 2 whole chickens, fresh vegetables for salad, potatoes for mashing, and ingredients for Sarah's famous chocolate cake. He also picked up a bottle of expensive champagne to celebrate Tony's recent promotion at work. The meat counter had beautiful lamb chops on sale. Marcus decided to buy some as a surprise for Sarah, who loved lamb but rarely cooked it because it was so expensive. He also grabbed some fancy cheese and crackers for appetizers. By the time Marcus finished shopping, his cart was overflowing. The checkout total was almost $300, but Marcus did not mind. Family dinners like this one were important, and he wanted everything to be perfect. Marcus loaded all the bags into his SUV. There were so many bags that he had to put some in the front passenger seat. As he drove home, he thought about how surprised and happy Sarah would be when she saw the lamb chops. When Marcus turned onto his street, he noticed Tyler Morrison skateboarding in front of his house. The teenager was going back and forth on the sidewalk, doing tricks on his skateboard. Marcus thought it was strange that Tyler was skating so close to his house, but maybe it was just a coincidence. Marcus pulled into his driveway and turned off the engine. As soon as he got out of the car, Tyler skateboarded over to him. Wow, Tyler said, looking at all the grocery bags. Another big shopping trip, huh? Marcus tried to be polite. Good morning, Tyler. Yes, we're having family over for dinner today. Tyler got off his skateboard and walked closer to Marcus's car. He looked into the windows at all the bags. Man, this is like the 3rd time this week I've seen you coming home with all this expensive stuff. Marcus was confused. 3rd time? I only shop once a week on Saturdays. Nah, dude, Tyler said, shaking his head. I've seen you coming and going with bags and stuff all the time. Wednesday, Thursday, yesterday, you're always carrying something. Marcus realized that Tyler had been watching his house. On Wednesday, Marcus had stopped at the pharmacy to pick up medicine for Emma's cough. On Thursday, he had bought coffee and donuts on his way home from work. Yesterday, he had picked up dry cleaning. I think you're confused, Marcus said calmly. I go to different stores for different things, just like everyone else. Tyler stepped closer and peered into the SUV. Dude, this has to be like $500 worth of stuff. How do you afford all this? Marcus felt his patience wearing thin. That's not really your business, Tyler. It kind of is my business, Tyler said, his voice getting louder. I live in this neighborhood too, and when someone is acting suspicious, people notice. Suspicious? Marcus asked. How is buying groceries suspicious? Tyler pointed at the bags. Come on, man, nobody needs this much food, and nobody can afford to shop like this unless they're doing something shady. Marcus could not believe what he was hearing. Tyler, I'm buying food for my family and guests. There's nothing shady about it. Yeah, right, Tyler said. My mom told me all about you. You claim you work for the city, but city workers don't make enough money to live here. So either you're lying about your job or you're making money some other way. Marcus felt his anger rising, but he tried to stay calm. Your mother doesn't know anything about my job or my finances. She knows enough, Tyler said. She knows you don't belong in this neighborhood. The words hit Marcus like a punch. I don't belong here? Why don't I belong here? Tyler looked Marcus up and down. You know why, he said. This neighborhood is for people who work hard and follow the rules. Not for people who, Marcus stared at the teenager. No, I don't know. Tell me exactly what you mean. Tyler seemed to realize he had said too much. I mean people who can't really afford to be here, he said quickly. People who are probably dealing drugs or stealing or something. Marcus stepped toward Tyler. Are you accusing me of dealing drugs? Tyler backed up a little but kept talking. I'm just saying it's weird, okay? You move into this expensive neighborhood, you drive a nice car, you buy hundreds of dollars of groceries every week. Where does all that money come from? From my job, Marcus said through gritted teeth. What job pays that much? You said you work for the city. My dad works for the city and he can barely afford our house. Marcus tried one more time to be reasonable. Different city jobs pay different amounts, Tyler. And I've been working for 15 years. I've earned the right to live wherever I can afford. Tyler shook his head. Nah, something's not right. And I'm going to figure out what it is. What does that mean? Marcus asked. It means I'm going to be watching you, Tyler said. And when I catch you doing whatever you're really doing, you're going to be in big trouble. Marcus had heard enough. Tyler, I want you to stay away from my house and my family. If you keep bothering us, I'm going to talk to your parents. Tyler laughed. Go ahead. My mom already knows your bad news. She's just waiting for proof. Proof of what? Proof that you're a drug dealer or a thief or whatever you really are, Tyler said. Because you're definitely not just some regular city worker. Marcus looked at this 16-year-old boy who was accusing him of being a criminal. He thought about all the years he had spent in police work, all the real criminals he had arrested, all the good he had done for his community, and now this spoiled teenager was calling him a drug dealer because he could afford to buy good food for his family. Tyler, Marcus said slowly, you need to be very careful about what you say. Accusing someone of being a criminal is serious business. Are you threatening me? Tyler asked, pulling out his phone. Because I can record everything you say. Marcus realized that Tyler was trying to provoke him into doing something that would get him in trouble. I'm not threatening you, he said. I'm giving you good advice. Stop watching my house, stop following me, and stop making accusations you can't prove. I don't need advice from you, Tyler said. What I need is for you to get out of my neighborhood. This is my neighborhood too, Marcus said. I bought my house just like everyone else. With dirty money, Tyler said. Marcus felt his control slipping. That's enough, he said in a voice that made Tyler step back. You don't know anything about me or my money. You're a kid making up stories because you can't handle having a black family in your neighborhood. This isn't about race, Tyler said quickly. This is about crime and drugs and keeping our community safe. Really? Marcus asked. Then why aren't you watching the white families who shop at expensive stores? Why aren't you questioning their money? Tyler did not have an answer for that. Whatever, he said. Just wait, I'm going to prove what you really are. Tyler picked up his skateboard and started to walk away. Then he turned back to Marcus. Oh, and by the way, Tyler said with a mean smile, my mom is calling a special HOA meeting about you. She's going to make sure everyone in the neighborhood knows to keep an eye on you. With that, Tyler skateboarded away, leaving Marcus standing alone in his driveway surrounded by grocery bags. Marcus looked at his house, where Sarah was probably starting to cook breakfast for their children. He thought about Tony and his wife, who would arrive in a few hours expecting a fun family dinner. He thought about Emma and Jake, who were excited to see their uncle and aunt. Then he looked down the street where Tyler Morrison had disappeared. Marcus realized that his peaceful life in Willowbrook Heights was about to become much more complicated. Tyler and his mother were not going to stop until they found a way to drive Marcus and his family out of the neighborhood. Marcus picked up his grocery bags and walked toward his house. He would not let these people ruin his family's dinner or their new life. But he knew that bigger problems were coming, and he would need to be ready for them. Marcus had just finished putting away the groceries when the doorbell rang. Through the front window, he could see 3 people standing on his porch. One was Janet Morrison, the HOA president. The other 2 were people he did not recognize. Sarah came down the stairs wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. Who is it, honey? She asked. The HOA president and some other people, Marcus said. Let me handle this. Marcus opened the front door. Janet Morrison stood in the center wearing a serious expression. To her left was an older man in a business suit. To her right was a woman about Janet's age with gray hair and expensive jewelry. Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, Janet said in a formal voice. I'm here on official HOA business. This is Robert Chen, our treasurer, and Margaret Foster, our secretary. Marcus nodded politely to each person. Good afternoon. What can I do for you? We need to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention, Janet said. May we come in? Marcus thought about saying no, but he decided it was better to deal with whatever this was now rather than later. Of course. Please come into the living room. The 3 HOA board members followed Marcus into his living room. Sarah joined them, sitting next to Marcus on the couch. The board members sat across from them in chairs. Janet Morrison opened a folder. She was carrying and pulled out several papers. Mr. Williams, we've received multiple complaints about your activities since you moved into our community. What kind of activities? Marcus asked. Robert Chen, the treasurer, spoke up. Unusual financial behavior, for one thing. Several neighbors have noticed that you make frequent trips to expensive stores and return with large amounts of merchandise. Marcus looked at Sarah, who seemed as confused as he was. I shop for groceries and household items just like everyone else, Marcus said. But not like everyone else, Margaret Foster said. The amount of money you appear to be spending is concerning. Janet Morrison nodded. Mr. Williams, this is a community where people work hard for their money. We have doctors, lawyers, business owners, people who have built their wealth over many years through legitimate means. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Are you suggesting that my wealth is not legitimate? We're suggesting that we have questions, Janet said. Questions that need answers. Robert Chen pulled out a small notebook. We've been keeping track of your spending habits. In the past 2 weeks alone, you've made 7 trips to various stores. The estimated value of your purchases is over $1,500. Marcus could not believe what he was hearing. You've been spying on me? Following me to stores and adding up what I spend? We've been observing, Margaret Foster said. It's our responsibility to protect the community from potentially harmful elements. Sarah spoke for the first time. Harmful elements? What are you talking about? Janet Morrison turned to Sarah. Mrs. Williams, surely you can understand our position. This is an expensive neighborhood with high property values. When someone moves in and displays unusual wealth without clear explanations, it raises red flags. What do you mean by unusual wealth? Sarah asked. We bought this house with a mortgage just like most people do. Yes, but how do you afford the mortgage payments? Robert Chen asked. Plus all the expensive shopping, the nice cars, the designer clothes we've seen you wearing? Marcus stood up. This is ridiculous. You people are questioning how I spend my own money in my own home. We have every right to ask these questions, Janet Morrison said, also standing up. According to the HOA bylaws, any activity that could negatively impact the community is subject to investigation. What activity? Marcus asked. Shopping? Living in my house? Breathing? Margaret Foster opened her own folder. Mr. Williams, we've done some research. You claim to work for the city, but we called the main city office. They wouldn't give us information about your specific job or salary. Marcus stared at her. You called my workplace? Who gave you the right to do that? We have the right to verify information provided by residents, Janet Morrison said. And, frankly, what we found was suspicious. Robert Chen nodded. City jobs don't typically pay enough to support this lifestyle. So either you're lying about your job, or you have other sources of income that you haven't disclosed. Sarah stood up, next to Marcus. Other sources of income? What are you suggesting? We're not suggesting anything specific, Janet Morrison said. But we need explanations. How does a city worker afford a $400,000 house? How does he afford to spend hundreds of dollars on groceries every week? How does he afford 2 new cars and expensive clothes? Marcus felt like he was in a bad dream. I've worked for the city for 15 years. I've been promoted several times. I make a good salary because I've earned it. What exactly do you do for the city? Margaret Foster asked. Marcus hesitated. He still did not want to tell these people about his job as police commander. I work in public safety, he said. Public safety? Robert Chen made a note in his book. That's very vague. Are you a firefighter, a paramedic, security guard? I work in law enforcement, Marcus said carefully. Janet Morrison's eyes lit up. Law enforcement? Are you a police officer? Yes, Marcus said. What rank? Margaret Foster asked. Marcus sighed. I'm a lieutenant, he lied. He did not want to tell them he was a commander because it might create more problems. Janet Morrison and her friends looked at each other. A police lieutenant, Janet said slowly. Even a lieutenant's salary wouldn't explain your lifestyle. Unless you're taking bribes, Robert Chen said quietly. The room went completely silent. Marcus felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. What did you just say? Robert Chen looked nervous but continued. Well, it's not uncommon for police officers to supplement their income through unofficial means. Marcus took a step toward Robert Chen. Sarah quickly grabbed his arm. Are you accusing my husband of taking bribes? Sarah asked, her voice shaking with anger. We're not accusing anyone of anything, Janet Morrison said quickly. We're just trying to understand how a police lieutenant can afford to live like a millionaire. Margaret Foster nodded. There have been cases in the news about corrupt police officers who take money from drug dealers or steal from crime scenes. Marcus could not speak. These people were openly suggesting that he was a corrupt cop. After 15 years of honest service, after working his way up through the ranks by following every rule and doing everything right, these strangers were calling him a criminal. Get out, Marcus said quietly. Excuse me? Janet Morrison asked. Get out of my house, Marcus said, louder this time. All of you right now. Mr. Williams, we're not finished with this conversation, Janet said. Yes, you are, Sarah said, standing next to her husband. This is our home and you're not welcome here. Margaret Foster stood up. If you refuse to cooperate with our investigation, we'll have to take other steps. What steps? Marcus asked. Robert Chen closed his notebook. We have connections with local law enforcement. If we suspect that a resident is engaged in illegal activities, we can request an official investigation. Janet Morrison nodded. We can also call for a community vote to have you removed from the neighborhood. On what grounds? Sarah asked. Violation of community standards, Janet said. Engaging in activities that threaten the safety and property values of other residents. Marcus walked to the front door and opened it. Leave. Now. The 3 board members gathered their papers and walked toward the door. As Janet Morrison passed Marcus, she stopped. Mr. Williams, she said, this isn't over. One way or another, we're going to find out the truth about you, and if you're doing anything illegal, we're going to make sure you pay for it. After they left, Marcus closed the door and leaned against it. Sarah came over and put her arms around him. I can't believe that just happened, Sarah said. They were accusing you of being a corrupt cop. Marcus held his wife tightly. I know, I can't believe it either. Maybe we should tell them the truth about your job, Sarah said. If they knew you were a commander, maybe they'd back off. Marcus shook his head. That might make things worse. They'd probably accuse me of abusing my position or something. Sarah looked worried. What are we going to do? Marcus thought about Janet Morrison's threat to call for an official investigation. If someone made false accusations about him to his own department, it could damage his career even if the accusations were proven wrong. I don't know, Marcus said honestly. But we can't let them drive us out of our own home. Upstairs, Emma and Jake were playing quietly in their rooms, unaware that their parents were dealing with neighbors who wanted to destroy their family's life in Willowbrook Heights. Marcus looked out the window at the neighborhood he had thought would be perfect for his children. Now it felt like enemy territory, full of people who would never accept him no matter how hard he worked or how honest he was. The worst part was that Marcus knew this was just the beginning. Janet Morrison and her friends had made it clear that they would not stop until they found a way to get rid of him, and Marcus had no idea how to fight back against people who were determined to believe he was a criminal. The next morning was a Monday, and Marcus left for work earlier than usual. He wanted to get to the police station before the morning briefing to catch up on paperwork. As his SUV disappeared down the street, Janet Morrison watched from her kitchen window. She had been waiting for this moment. Janet had spent most of Sunday night thinking about her conversation with Marcus Williams. She was convinced that something was very wrong with their new neighbor. No regular police officer could afford to live the way he was living. The expensive groceries, the nice cars, the casual way he spent money, it all pointed to one thing, in her mind. Marcus Williams was a corrupt cop. Janet picked up her phone and dialed 911. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was steady when the dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher asked. Yes, I need to report suspicious criminal activity in my neighborhood, Janet said. What type of criminal activity, ma'am? Janet took a deep breath. I believe my neighbor is dealing drugs from his house. I think he's been using his position as a police officer to protect his illegal business. The dispatcher paused. You're reporting that a police officer is dealing drugs? Yes, Janet said firmly. His name is Marcus Williams. He lives at 1247 Maple Street in Willowbrook Heights. He claims to be a police lieutenant, but his lifestyle suggests he's making money illegally. What specific illegal activity have you witnessed? The dispatcher asked. Janet had prepared for this question. He's constantly bringing large bags and packages into his house. He makes multiple trips to stores every day, always carrying something. His spending habits are completely inconsistent with a police officer's salary. Ma'am, shopping and carrying packages isn't illegal, the dispatcher said patiently. But it is when you're using drug money to pay for everything, Janet insisted. This man has been acting suspiciously since the day he moved in. He's evasive about his job, he spends enormous amounts of money, and he's been intimidating neighbors who ask questions. The dispatcher typed notes into the computer. Has he threatened you or anyone else directly? Yes, Janet said, stretching the truth. Yesterday he became very aggressive when we asked him about his activities. He raised his voice and made it clear that we shouldn't ask questions about his business. I see. Have you seen any actual drug transactions or drug-related activity? Janet hesitated. She had not seen anything like that, but she was sure it was happening. He's very careful about hiding it, she said. But the signs are all there. Constant visitors at odd hours. Large amounts of cash, expensive purchases that don't match his supposed income. The dispatcher was starting to sound concerned. What makes you think he's a police officer? He told us he works in law enforcement, Janet said. But when we tried to verify his employment, the city wouldn't give us information. That's suspicious, don't you think? The dispatcher was quiet for a moment. She was looking at the address Janet had given, and something seemed familiar about it. Ma'am, can you repeat the address? Tom 47, Maple Street, Willowbrook Heights. The dispatcher's heart sank. She recognized that address. It was the home of Commander Marcus Williams, one of the most respected officers in the entire police department. This woman was making accusations against her own boss's boss. Ma'am, the dispatcher said carefully, are you absolutely certain about these accusations? Making false reports about police officers is a serious matter. Janet became defensive. I'm not making false reports. I'm reporting what I've observed. This man is clearly engaged in illegal activities, and someone needs to investigate. Have you considered that there might be innocent explanations for what you've seen? Like what? Janet asked. How does a police lieutenant afford a $400,000 house and hundreds of dollars of groceries every week? How does he afford 2 new cars and expensive clothes? There's no innocent explanation for that kind of money. The dispatcher tried once more. Police officers, especially those with many years of experience, can earn good salaries, and people save money for years to buy nice homes. Not this much money, Janet said stubbornly. I've done my research. Police salaries are public information. Even a lieutenant doesn't make enough to live like this man is living. The dispatcher realized that this woman was not going to be talked out of her suspicions. She had clearly made up her mind and would not listen to reason. The dispatcher also knew that she had to follow protocol, even when the complaint seemed ridiculous. All right, ma'am, the dispatcher said. I'm going to send officers to investigate your complaint. Can you give me your name and contact information? Janet Morrison. I live at 1251 Maple Street, right across from the suspect. Mrs. Morrison, the officers will need to speak with you when they arrive. Will you be available? Yes, I'll be here. But please tell them to be careful. If this man really is dealing drugs, he could be dangerous. And since he's supposedly a police officer, he might have weapons. The dispatcher closed her eyes. This was going to be a disaster. Mrs. Morrison, how many officers do you think we should send? At least 2, Janet said quickly. Maybe more. You never know how drug dealers will react when they're cornered. And if he's corrupt, he might try to use his police connections to avoid arrest. All right, ma'am. Officers will be there within 30 minutes. After Janet hung up, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She was finally taking action against Marcus Williams. Soon, everyone in the neighborhood would know the truth about their suspicious new neighbor. Janet called her son Tyler into the kitchen. Tyler, the police are coming to arrest our neighbor, she said proudly. Tyler's eyes widened. Really? They're going to arrest him for dealing drugs? If my suspicions are correct, yes, Janet said. I told them everything we've observed. His suspicious shopping trips, his expensive lifestyle, his evasive answers about his job. Tyler grinned. This is awesome. I can't wait to see him get arrested. Now, Tyler, Janet said, we need to be careful. If he really is dangerous, we should stay inside and watch from the window. Can I record it on my phone? Tyler asked. That's a good idea, Janet said. We might need evidence later. Meanwhile, at the police station, the dispatcher was having a very uncomfortable conversation with her supervisor. She had to explain that someone had just called 911 to report that Commander Williams was dealing drugs from his home. Are you serious? The supervisor asked. I'm afraid so, the dispatcher said. The caller was very insistent. She claims she's been watching him and that his spending habits prove he's corrupt. The supervisor rubbed his forehead. This is a nightmare. We have to respond to the call, but we're basically sending officers to investigate their own commander. No, the dispatcher said. I tried to talk her out of it, but she was convinced she was right. Who's available to respond? The dispatcher checked the duty roster. Rodriguez and Thompson are in that area. Perfect, the supervisor said sarcastically. We're sending 2 of Williams' own officers to investigate him. This day just keeps getting better. The supervisor picked up his radio. Unit 47, this is dispatch. We have a sensitive situation that requires your immediate attention. Officer Rodriguez responded immediately. Unit 47 here. What kind of sensitive situation? The supervisor hesitated. This was not the kind of thing you wanted to say over the radio where other officers could hear. Rodriguez, I need you and Thompson to respond to 1247 Maple Street for a welfare check. But call me on your cell phone first. This is complicated. Rodriguez was confused, but he followed orders. Copy that, dispatch. We'll call you in 2 minutes. When Rodriguez called, the supervisor explained the situation as carefully as he could. Rodriguez, we got a complaint about the resident at that address. The caller thinks he's involved in drug dealing. Drug dealing? Rodriguez was shocked. Sir, that's Commander Williams' address. Someone called to report the commander for drug dealing. I know how it sounds, the supervisor said. But we have to follow protocol. The caller was very specific in her accusations. You and Thompson need to respond and document everything, but obviously handle this with extreme care. Rodriguez looked at his partner Thompson, who had been listening to the conversation. Both officers looked confused and worried. Sir, Rodriguez said, are we really supposed to investigate our own commander based on some random person's complaint? You're supposed to respond to a citizen complaint and document what you find, the supervisor said. Nothing more, nothing less. And Rodriguez, this stays between us until we figure out what's really going on. As Rodriguez and Thompson drove toward Willowbrook Heights, they tried to make sense of what they had just been told. Someone in Commander Williams' own neighborhood had called 911 to report him for dealing drugs. It was the most ridiculous thing either officer had ever heard. What kind of person calls the police on a police commander? Thompson asked. The kind of person who doesn't know he's a police commander, Rodriguez replied. Both officers had the same thought at the same time. Commander Williams had mentioned that he was having some problems with his new neighbors. Maybe this was what he had been talking about. As they turned onto Maple Street, both officers felt sick to their stomachs. They were about to knock on their respected commander's door and tell him that someone had accused him of being a drug dealer. Officers Rodriguez and Thompson pulled their patrol car onto Maple Street at exactly 9:47 a.m. They drove slowly, both feeling nervous about what they were about to do. Neither officer had ever been in a situation like this before. How do you investigate your own boss based on what was obviously a ridiculous complaint? As soon as their police car appeared, Janet Morrison came running out of her house. She had been watching from her kitchen window for the past 20 minutes waiting for the police to arrive. Tyler followed close behind her, holding his phone ready to record everything. Janet waved at the police car and pointed toward Marcus Williams's house. Officers! Officers! I'm the one who called. I'm Janet Morrison. Rodriguez parked the car and got out slowly. He recognized Mrs. Morrison from community meetings he had attended with Commander Williams. Thompson got out from the passenger side, looking just as uncomfortable as his partner. Ma'am, Rodriguez said politely, you called about suspicious activity at 1247 Maple Street? Yes, Janet said excitedly. That house right there. The man who lives there is definitely dealing drugs. I have so much evidence to show you. Thompson looked at the house where he had attended Commander Williams's barbecue just 2 months ago. What kind of evidence, ma'am? Janet pulled out a small notebook from her pocket. I've been keeping track of everything. He makes multiple trips to stores every day, always carrying large bags and packages. He spends hundreds of dollars on groceries every week. He drives expensive cars and wears designer clothes. There's no way a police officer can afford all that on a regular salary. Rodriguez and Thompson looked at each other. They both knew that Commander Williams made a very good salary after 15 years on the force. They also knew he was one of the most honest cops they had ever worked with. Mrs. Morrison, Rodriguez said carefully, have you actually seen any drug transactions? Any actual illegal activity? Well, no, Janet admitted. But it's obvious what's happening. He's very careful to hide it. He probably does his drug deals at night or when I'm not watching. Tyler stepped forward with his phone. "Officer, this guy has been acting suspicious since the day he moved in. He's always evasive when we ask him questions about his job. And yesterday he got really aggressive when my mom tried to talk to him." Thompson looked at the teenager. "Aggressive how?" "He raised his voice and told us to leave him alone," Tyler said. He was clearly trying to hide something. Rodriguez was starting to understand what had happened. Commander Williams had probably gotten frustrated with nosy neighbors and told them to mind their own business. In Tyler and Janet's minds, this had become evidence of criminal activity. "Mrs. Morrison," Rodriguez said, "you mentioned that you think this man is a police officer. How do you know that?" "He told us he works in law enforcement," Janet said. "He claims to be a lieutenant, but we tried to verify his employment and the city wouldn't give us information. That's suspicious, don't you think?" Thompson almost laughed. The city wouldn't give out employment information because of privacy laws, not because Commander Williams was hiding something, but he kept his thoughts to himself. "Ma'am," Thompson said, "we need to speak with the resident to get his side of the story. Are you willing to wait while we do that?" "Of course," Janet said. "I want to be here when you arrest him. Tyler, make sure you're recording everything." Rodriguez and Thompson walked slowly toward Commander Williams' front door. Both officers were dreading this conversation. How do you tell your boss that his neighbors think he's a drug dealer? Rodriguez rang the doorbell. After a few seconds, the door opened and Commander Williams appeared. He was wearing casual weekend clothes, jeans and a polo shirt. When he saw his two officers standing on his porch, he looked confused. "Rodriguez, Thompson, what are you guys doing here?" Marcus asked. Rodriguez looked extremely uncomfortable. "Commander, we received a complaint about this address. We're required to follow up on it." Marcus looked past his officers toward Janet Morrison, who was standing in the street watching everything. "A complaint about what?" Thompson cleared his throat. "Sir, someone called 911 to report suspicious activity at this address. We know this is awkward, but we have to document that we responded to the call." Marcus understood immediately. "Let me guess. Mrs. Morrison thinks I'm dealing drugs." "How did you know?" Rodriguez asked. Marcus sighed. "Because she's been harassing me about my shopping habits for weeks. She can't understand how I can afford to live here, so she's decided I must be a criminal." "Sir," Thompson said quietly, "she doesn't know you're a commander. She thinks you're a lieutenant." Marcus nodded. "I didn't want to tell her my real rank. I thought it might make things worse." Rodriguez looked back at Janet Morrison, who was watching them intently. "Commander, what do you want us to do? We can't just leave without filing some kind of report." Marcus thought for a moment. "Do your job, officers. Ask me the questions you need to ask, document my answers, and file your report. Just because she's making false accusations doesn't mean you should skip the proper procedures." "Are you sure, sir?" Thompson asked. "I'm sure," Marcus said. "If we don't handle this properly, she'll just call again and claim that the police are covering for me." Rodriguez pulled out his notebook. "All right, Commander. For the record, have you engaged in any illegal drug activity at this address?" "No," Marcus said clearly. "Have you sold, purchased, or distributed illegal drugs from this location?" "No." "Are there any illegal drugs currently in your home?" "No." Thompson joined in. "Sir, the complainant says you make frequent trips to stores and spend large amounts of money. Can you explain your shopping habits?" Marcus almost smiled. "I shop for groceries once a week, usually on Saturdays. Sometimes I stop at other stores for household items or pharmacy needs. I spend what I consider reasonable amounts on food and necessities for my family." "The complainant estimates that you spend hundreds of dollars per week on groceries," Rodriguez said. "That's probably accurate," Marcus said. "Quality food is expensive and I have a family of 4. I also occasionally buy extra food when we have guests." Janet Morrison was getting impatient. She walked closer to the house with Tyler right behind her, still recording. "Officers," Janet called out. "Why aren't you searching his house? Why aren't you asking him about all the suspicious packages he brings home every day?" Rodriguez turned toward Janet. "Ma'am, please stay back while we conduct our investigation." But Janet kept talking. "Ask him how he can afford a $400,000 House on a police salary. Ask him about the expensive cars and designer clothes. Marcus looked at his officers. Gentlemen, I think it's time for the truth. Thompson nodded. Sir, would you like to explain your actual position with the department? Marcus turned toward Janet Morrison and spoke loud enough for her to hear clearly. Mrs. Morrison, I am Commander Marcus Williams of the Metropolitan Police Department. I have been with the department for 15 years, and I have worked my way up from patrol officer to my current rank through hard work and dedication. My salary is a matter of public record, and it is more than sufficient to afford my lifestyle. Janet's mouth fell open. Commander? She said weakly. Tyler stopped recording and looked at his mother in panic. Rodriguez addressed Janet directly. Ma'am, Commander Williams is one of the highest-ranking officers in our department. He supervises over 200 police officers, including Officer Thompson and myself. Janet Morrison's face turned bright red. She realized that she had just called 911 to report her own police commander for drug dealing. Worse, she had done it based on nothing more than the fact that he could afford to buy expensive groceries. I didn't know, Janet stammered. He never said he was a commander. That's because I value my privacy, Marcus said. I don't feel the need to announce my job title to satisfy my neighbor's curiosity about my finances. Tyler Morrison looked like he wanted to disappear. All of his accusations about Marcus being a drug dealer now seemed incredibly stupid. He had been harassing a police commander based on nothing but prejudice and assumptions. Mrs. Morrison, Thompson said formally, filing a false police report is a serious offense. Making accusations without evidence can have legal consequences. Janet started to panic. False report? I wasn't making a false report, I was reporting what I observed. You reported drug dealing, Rodriguez said. You called 911 and claimed that Commander Williams was selling drugs from his home. That's a very serious accusation. But I really thought, Janet began. You thought what? Marcus asked. You thought that a black man couldn't afford to live in this neighborhood without selling drugs? You thought that expensive groceries meant criminal activity? What exactly did you think, Mrs. Morrison? Janet Morrison could not answer that question, without admitting to the racial bias that had driven her accusations. She stood there silently, realizing that her prejudice had led her to make one of the biggest mistakes of her life. The other neighbors who had gathered to watch the police response began to understand what had really happened. Some of them looked ashamed. Others quietly walked back to their houses, not wanting to be associated with Janet Morrison's embarrassing mistake. Rodriguez closed his notebook. Commander, do you want to press charges for filing a false report? After Marcus went back into his house, a crowd of neighbors remained on the street. Word had spread quickly through Willowbrook Heights that police cars were on Maple Street. People had come out of their homes expecting to see a drug dealer being arrested. Instead, they had witnessed Janet Morrison's humiliating mistake. Officer Rodriguez addressed the crowd. Everyone needs to return to their homes now. This matter has been resolved. But Janet Morrison was not ready to give up. She was embarrassed and angry, and she felt like she needed to defend herself. As Rodriguez and Thompson walked back to their patrol car, Janet followed them. Officers, wait, she called out. Just because he's a police commander doesn't mean he's innocent. Police officers can be corrupt too. You see it on the news all the time. Rodriguez stopped walking and turned around. Ma'am, you need to stop talking right now. You're making this situation worse for yourself. But what if I'm right? Janet insisted. What if he really is using his position to make money illegally? Shouldn't someone investigate that? Thompson stepped closer to Janet. Mrs. Morrison, you just accused one of the most respected officers in our department of being a drug dealer. You did this based on the fact that he buys expensive groceries. Do you understand how serious that is? Tyler Morrison grabbed his mother's arm. Mom, stop talking, please, you're making this worse. But Janet was too upset to listen. I know what I saw. He spends money like he's rich, but police officers aren't rich. Something doesn't add up. More neighbors had gathered to listen to this conversation. Many of them were hearing about Janet's accusations for the first time. Tom Peterson, the neighbor who had first welcomed Marcus to the neighborhood, looked disgusted. Janet, Tom said loudly, you called the police on our neighbor because he Buys good food? Have you lost your mind? It's not just the food, Janet said defensively. It's everything. The expensive cars, the designer clothes, the way he acts like he owns the place. He does own the place, said Margaret Chen, Robert Chen's wife. He bought his house just like the rest of us. Janet Morrison looked around at her neighbors, hoping for support. Instead, she saw disappointment and embarrassment on their faces. Even her closest friends were shaking their heads. Rodriguez had heard enough. Mrs. Morrison, I'm going to explain something to you. Commander Williams makes approximately $95,000 per year. After 15 years of service, he has earned raises and promotions that put him in the top salary range for police officers. That salary, combined with his wife's income and their savings, is more than enough to afford their lifestyle. 95,000, Janet whispered. She had assumed police officers made much less money. Yes, Thompson added, and that doesn't include overtime pay, which can add thousands more each year. Commander Williams works hard for his money, and he has every right to spend it however he wants. Janet Morrison's face was turning red again. She was starting to realize how badly she had misjudged Marcus Williams. But instead of admitting her mistake, she became more defensive. Well, how was I supposed to know all that, she asked. He should have told us he was a commander when he moved in. Why? Asked Tom Peterson. Do you tell everyone your salary when you meet them? That's different, Janet said. How is it different? Tom asked. Janet could not answer that question without admitting the real reason she had been suspicious of Marcus. She had assumed that a black man could not legitimately afford to live in their neighborhood. But she could not say that out loud. In front of all these people, Officer Rodriguez decided to end this conversation. Mrs. Morrison, we're going to file a report about today's incident. You falsely reported criminal activity with no evidence. If you continue to harass Commander Williams or his family, you could face charges for stalking and harassment. I wasn't harassing anyone, Janet protested. You were watching his house, Thompson said. You were following him to stores. You were questioning his right to live in this neighborhood. That's harassment. Tyler Morrison spoke up for the first time since the revelation about Marcus's job. Mom, they're right. We were being creepy. We were watching him all the time and making up stories about what he was doing. Janet stared at her son in shock. Tyler, I thought you agreed with me. Tyler looked ashamed. I did agree with you, but that was before I knew he was a police commander. Now I feel stupid. We accused a cop of being a drug dealer just because he can afford nice things. It wasn't just because of that, Janet said weakly. Then what was it because of? Tom Peterson asked directly. Again, Janet could not answer without admitting to racial bias. The truth was that she had never questioned the finances of any white neighbors. She had never followed white neighbors to stores or counted their grocery bags. She had never assumed that white neighbors were criminals just because they had money. Margaret Chen stepped forward. Janet, I think you owe Commander Williams and his family a serious apology. What you did today was wrong. I was trying to protect the neighborhood, Janet said. From what? Margaret asked. From a decorated police officer and his family? From people who work hard and follow the rules? Janet Morrison was starting to cry again. She was beginning to understand that her actions had been based on prejudice, not legitimate concerns about crime. But admitting that was the hardest thing she had ever had to do. Officer Rodriguez made one final statement before leaving. Mrs. Morrison, this incident will be reported to your HOA management company. Making false accusations against residents is a violation of your responsibilities as HOA president. Janet's eyes widened. My responsibilities as president? Yes, ma'am, Thompson said. HOA presidents are supposed to protect residents from harassment, not create harassment. Your actions today put the entire HOA at legal risk. With that, the two officers got into their patrol car and drove away. The crowd of neighbors began to break up, many of them talking quietly among themselves about what they had just witnessed. Tom Peterson approached Janet Morrison one last time. Janet, you need to resign as HOA president. What you did today was inexcusable. I made a mistake, Janet said through her tears. You made a racist assumption, Tom said bluntly. And then you tried to use the police to force a good family out of our neighborhood. That's not a mistake, that's a choice. Several other neighbors nodded in agreement. Janet Morrison realized that she had not only humiliated herself, but she had also lost the respect of her entire community. Tyler Morrison walked over to his mother and took her arm. Mom, let's go home. We need to talk about what we're going to do to fix this. As Janet and Tyler walked back to their house, the remaining neighbors continued to discuss what had happened. Many of them felt guilty for not speaking up sooner. When they had heard Janet making comments about Marcus Williams, Margaret Chen summed up what everyone was thinking. We should have stopped her weeks ago when she first started spreading rumors. Commander Williams and his family deserve better from this community. Tom Peterson nodded. They certainly do. And we need to make sure this never happens again. Meanwhile, inside his house, Marcus Williams sat at his kitchen table with Sarah and their children. Emma and Jake had watched the police cars from their bedroom window and wanted to know what had happened. Daddy, Emma asked, why were police officers at our house? Are we in trouble? Marcus hugged his daughter. No, sweetheart, we're not in trouble. There was just a misunderstanding with one of our neighbors. What kind of misunderstanding? Jake asked. Sarah answered this time. Some people didn't understand what Daddy's job was, but everything is okay now. Marcus looked out his front window, at the neighborhood where he had hoped his family could live peacefully. Today had been a turning point. Everyone in Willowbrook Heights now knew exactly who he was and what he did for a living. The question was whether that knowledge would make things better or worse. One thing Marcus knew for certain was that Janet Morrison's time as HOA president was over. Her actions today had been so outrageous that even her supporters would have to abandon her. But Marcus also knew that the underlying prejudice that had motivated her actions was still there in other neighbors. Today's revelation about his job might have solved the immediate problem, but it had not solved the bigger problem of racial bias in his community. As Marcus tucked his children into bed that night, he wondered what tomorrow would bring in Willowbrook Heights. Would his neighbors treat him with the respect he had earned through 15 years of public service? Or would they find new ways to make his family feel unwelcome? Only time would tell whether today's dramatic events would lead to real change in his neighborhood, or whether Janet Morrison's humiliating mistake would simply teach the other residents to be more careful about hiding their prejudices. 3 days after the police incident, Marcus Williams received a phone call at work from David Harrison, the property management company that oversaw the Willowbrook Heights HOA. Marcus had been expecting this call. Commander Williams, Mr. Harrison, said, I want to personally apologize for what happened on Monday. We've reviewed the police report and spoken with several witnesses. Mrs. Morrison's actions were completely unacceptable. Marcus leaned back in his office chair. I appreciate the call, Mr. Harrison. What steps is the management company taking? Mrs. Morrison has been removed as HOA president, effective immediately, Mr. Harrison said. We're also implementing new training requirements for all board members about fair housing laws and proper complaint procedures. What about the false police report? Marcus asked. We've consulted with our legal team, Mr. Harrison said. If you choose to press charges, we will fully support your decision. What Mrs. Morrison did was harassment, and it exposed the HOA to significant liability. Marcus had been thinking about this decision for 3 days. Sarah wanted him to press charges, arguing that Janet Morrison needed to face real consequences for her actions. But Marcus was thinking about Emma and Jake, who would have to grow up in this neighborhood. I've decided not to press criminal charges, Marcus said. But I want her actions documented in case there are any future incidents. That's very generous of you, Commander, Mr. Harrison said. I can assure you that Mrs. Morrison understands the seriousness of what she did. She's extremely remorseful. Marcus doubted that Janet Morrison was truly remorseful, but he was willing to give her a chance to prove him wrong. The next morning, Marcus was surprised to find Tyler Morrison sitting on his front porch steps. The teenager looked nervous and ashamed. Marcus almost went back inside, but then he decided to hear what Tyler had to say. Tyler, Marcus said, walking over to his porch. "What are you doing here?" Tyler stood up quickly. "Commander Williams, I wanted to apologize for everything I said and did. I was completely wrong about you, and I'm really sorry." Marcus studied the boy's face. Tyler seemed genuinely upset about what had happened. "Why are you apologizing now, Tyler? Because you found out I'm a police commander?" Tyler shook his head. "No, sir. I mean, yes, I was shocked when I found out your real job. But I've been thinking about this for 3 days, and I realized that even if you weren't a police officer, what I did was wrong." "How so?" Marcus asked. Tyler took a deep breath. "I made assumptions about you based on your race. I couldn't believe that a black family could afford to live in this neighborhood honestly. So I made up stories about you, being a drug dealer. That was racist and it was stupid." Marcus was surprised by Tyler's honesty. "What made you realize that?" "My dad," Tyler said. "When he found out what happened, he was so angry with me and my mom. He made me think about how I would feel if someone assumed I was a criminal just because of how I looked or where I lived." Marcus nodded. "That's a good lesson to learn." "Commander Williams," Tyler said, "is there anything I can do to make up for what I did? I know saying sorry isn't enough." Marcus thought about this. "Tyler, do you really want to make amends?" "Yes, sir." "I really do." Marcus considered his options. "There's a community center downtown that works with at-risk youth. They need volunteers to help with after-school programs. If you're serious about making amends, you can volunteer there for 6 months." Tyler nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. I'll do that. I'll call them today." "And Tyler," Marcus added, "I want you to attend diversity training classes. The police department offers community programs about bias and prejudice. You need to understand why what you did was so harmful." "I'll do whatever you think is right," Tyler said. Marcus was impressed by the teenager's willingness to accept responsibility. "All right, Tyler. If you follow through on these commitments, we can move forward." Tyler stood up to leave, then turned back. "Commander Williams, your kids seem really nice. Emma was drawing with chalk on your driveway yesterday and her pictures were amazing. Maybe sometime, if it's okay, I could apologize to them too." Marcus smiled for the first time since this whole situation began. "I think that would be appropriate, Tyler. But you need to earn that privilege through your actions, not just your words." That afternoon, Marcus received another unexpected visitor. Tom Peterson knocked on his door, carrying a bottle of wine and looking embarrassed. "Marcus," Tom said, "I owe you an apology too. I should have spoken up sooner when Janet started spreading rumors about you. I knew what she was doing was wrong, but I didn't want to get involved." Marcus invited Tom inside. "I appreciate you saying that, Tom. The truth is," Tom continued, "several of us heard Janet making comments about your family. We should have told her to stop. Instead, we let her harassment continue until it got completely out of control." Marcus poured 2 glasses of water and sat down with Tom in his living room. "What's the mood in the neighborhood now?" Tom sighed. "People are ashamed. Most of your neighbors are good people, Marcus. They're embarrassed that Janet's actions represented our community. We want to do better." "How?" Marcus asked. "Well, Margaret Chen is organizing a neighborhood welcome party for your family. It's something we should have done when you first moved in. And we're starting a community dialogue group to talk about diversity and inclusion." Marcus was cautiously optimistic. "That sounds good, Tom, but I need to see actions, not just words." "You will," Tom promised. "We're also changing the HOA bylaws to prevent this kind of harassment from happening again. No one should be questioned about their finances or followed around the neighborhood." Over the next few weeks, Marcus began to see real changes in Willowbrook Heights. The welcome party that Margaret Chen organized was attended by over 30 neighbors. People brought food, introduced themselves properly, and made genuine efforts to get to know Marcus's family. Tyler Morrison followed through on his commitments. He began volunteering at the community center and attending diversity training classes. He also started saying hello to Emma and Jake when he saw them playing outside, though he was still too nervous to have long conversations with them. Janet. Morrison was a different story. She had become a pariah in the neighborhood. Most of her former friends avoided her, and she rarely left her house except for necessary errands. When she did encounter Marcus or his family, she looked away quickly and hurried past. 3 months. After the police incident, Marcus was working in his front yard when Janet Morrison approached him. She looked tired and older than she had just a few months ago. "Commander Williams," she said quietly. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Marcus put down his gardening tools. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Morrison?" Janet wrung her hands nervously. "I wanted to tell you that my family is moving. We're leaving Willowbrook Heights." Marcus was not surprised. Janet's position in the community had become impossible after her false accusations. "I also wanted to tell you," Janet continued, "that I've been seeing a counselor. She's helping me understand why I made such terrible assumptions about you and your family." "That's good, Mrs. Morrison," Marcus said. "I hope that helps you." Janet nodded. "I know you probably don't believe this, but I am truly sorry. Not just sorry that I got caught or embarrassed. I'm sorry that I let my prejudices hurt your family." Marcus looked at Janet Morrison and saw a woman who was genuinely struggling with her own biases. "I accept your apology, Mrs. Morrison. I hope you learn from this experience." Janet began to cry. "I never thought of myself as racist. I have black friends at work. I vote for black candidates. But when you moved into my neighborhood, all my prejudices came out. I couldn't handle the idea that you belonged here as much as I did." "The first step in changing is recognizing the problem," Marcus said. "I hope you continue working on it." After Janet left, Marcus felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but it came at a high cost for everyone involved. Janet Morrison's life had been turned upside down, Tyler had learned hard lessons about prejudice, and the entire neighborhood had been forced to confront their own biases. That evening, Marcus was grilling dinner in his backyard when Emma ran up to him. "Daddy," she said, "Mrs. Chen invited me to her granddaughter's birthday party next weekend. Can I go?" Marcus smiled. "Of course you can, sweetheart." Jake came running over too. "And Tyler Morrison asked if I wanted to play basketball with him and his friends. Can I do that?" Marcus was pleased to hear that Tyler was making an effort to connect with his children. "Yes, you can play basketball with them." Sarah joined them on the patio, carrying a plate of the expensive cheese and crackers that had started this whole controversy months ago. "How are you feeling about everything?" Sarah asked her husband. Marcus looked around his backyard, where his children were playing safely while dinner cooked on the grill. He could hear his neighbors talking and laughing in their own yards. The UPC community was not perfect, but it was better than it had been. "I feel hopeful," Marcus said. "Real change is possible when people are willing to confront their prejudices and do the work to be better." Sarah kissed her husband on the cheek. "I'm proud of how you handled everything. You could have destroyed Janet Morrison and Tyler, but instead you gave them a chance to learn and grow." Marcus nodded. "That's what good policing is about.